Well, hello, everybody. This is Jonathan Weedman with Community Conversations, presented by Outlook Newspaper Group. And today, I am so pleased and just delighted to have with us Bobbi Abram, who is the Executive Director of the Pasadena City College Foundation. Bobbi is a dear friend, a great leader in our community, and we're just so pleased to have you with us today for our community conversation. Bobbi, how you doing?
Thank you, Jonathan. Glad to be here, and I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing terrific, never better. Well, let me start off with a question, Bobbi. You have enjoyed a remarkable career, and you have touched so many lives through your work. And we're going to talk about that today. But it's really special stuff. And let's start at the beginning. You arrived to Pasadena in 2012 from Kansas. Very different part of the country.
Yes.
And tell us about your formative years and what led you on this path.
Okay. It's an interesting story. It's got some twists and turns in it. I was actually born and raised in Arkansas and ended up in Kansas City when my former spouse was attending law school. And I spent 30 years in Kansas City to the week that I moved to California.
Wow.
So I had an entire life there, and it's there that I fell in love with nonprofit work. I started out working at a bank called United Missouri Bank at the time. It's now called UMB.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who are involved in the arts nationally, you probably know the name Crosby Kemper Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked in the general counsel's office. And I worked a little bit on the what they called UNIMOPAC, which was a political action committee, and where he and the employees of the bank would serve and support candidates. And so I got to meet people like Claire McCaskill early on when her hair was down to here, and she was running for state office in Missouri. And Kit Bond would come to our office regularly and pick up contributions. And Jack Danforth, got to meet some really amazing people.
How interesting.
And what I fell in love with, though, was not banking. What I fell in love with was watching Crosby Kemper be this amazing philanthropist in the community. And I thought, that is cool work. I love what's getting done there. And so I actually left the profit world and went to the nonprofit world. And I got my degree, got a master's in public administration at the Henry Block School of Business at University of Missouri, Kansas City. And so got to meet Henry Block even. I started in the nonprofit world in, strangely, I had been to a community college right after high school. Leaving Arkansas, my parents had moved to New York my senior year. And so I ended up moving to Stony Brook, New York. And I went to this community college in Selden, New York called Suffolk County Community College. And, my parents were in the ministry. And so they didn't have money to send me even to Stony Brook, which was right down the street.
Yeah.
And so I went to Suffolk County Community College. I got Pell Grants and BEOG money to make it all possible. And once I started college and started seeing what education could do and how it can transform a life, I began to realize, it is kind of the great equalizer. So even though I came from very humble means, in a humble place, I was going to be able to reach my potential by getting my education. And community college education is where the door opened for me because I couldn't afford to go anyplace else. So not only did I get my education starting at a community college, but I also realized that that's where it happens for people. And so it's sort of an intersection moment in my life where I realized I can do this. And so I began to get my education. I'm one of the few people I know that graduated with no student loans.
Wow.
because my employers through the years at the time would also help pay for my education. In fact, United Missouri Bank helped pay for my education. And so by the time I finished my master's degree, I was already sold on education and the nonprofit world. And so the perfect intersection of those two things is institutional advancement in a 4-year or 2-year institution. And so I began working in a community college foundation. Actually, I actually worked at UMKC Law School for a while,
Wow.
and they got hired by the foundation at Johnson County Community College in Overland Park, Kansas, and just fell in love with foundation work, and also fell in love with the 2-year institution. You know, when you're in Kansas City, you're right there on the state line. You know, part of Kansas City is in Missouri and part of Kansas City is in Kansas.
Right.
And, you know, there's this rivalry between Mizzou and KU. And so you're either a Jayhawks or a Tigers fan. And so the desire when you're in higher ed at that point is, I always wanted to work for one of those big institutions that had those great, you know, sports teams and the Greek system. And there was just so much energy around philanthropy in those institutions. But as I began to see the need of the community colleges only raise about 2% of the philanthropic dollars that go to higher education.
Wow.
Yeah, 98% goes to 4-year institutions. And so I began to realize I had a ministry of my own. You know, I really needed to put my energies right there where the need was. And so that's how my career in community colleges really started.
Well, it's awesome, and it sounds, Bobbi, it sounds like you worked really hard. I mean, all the different jobs while you were in school, all these intersections in your life. You know, you talk about the importance of community college. It really is the gateway for so many people to higher education who perhaps didn't, you know, plan when they were in high school, or who do not have the financial means, or who have multiple other responsibilities in their lives that, you know, prevent them from a 4-year university and that experience. You know, it is so important to so many people. Can you just talk a little bit about the importance of that, the importance of community college to the average person?
You are absolutely right to call it a gateway. That's exactly what it is. I remember the mission of community colleges back in the late 70s, early 80s, when I started in the business, so to speak, was affordability and accessibility. We wanted to make community college or college education available, you know, on the street corner, so to speak, so that people didn't have to travel for college or have to live in a dorm situation if their life just wasn't set up for that kind of experience.
Or have some incredible academic achievement in these highly competitive settings.
Absolutely.
Where everybody could grow.
Yes, everyone needs the ability to reach their potential. And so a lot of community colleges started as the 2 years to a 4-year degree. And then a lot of them ended up merging with what they used to call trade schools or vocational schools. So that's why, for instance, at Pasadena City College, where I am now, 40% of our students are vocational students. So they're going into those areas where you need a certification, HVAC systems, or auto mechanics, or welders, nurses, rad tech, all of those things where you don't necessarily need a 4-year degree for that, but you do need some sort of training and certification. And so when those two great ideas merged, the community college system was really, really born. And now there's over 1,100 of them, almost 1,200 of them across the United States. But it is evolved in those years, and going from a mission of affordability and accessibility, we're now focusing on, because now some community colleges have wait lists even.
Wow.
So now we're moving to career and completion. So we want to make sure that, because a lot of times students would start at a community college and they would kind of explore and try to figure out what it is they really wanted. What we want to do now is make sure that they get the support that they need right away to take some assessment tests, identify their skills, their strengths, their interests, and get them put in a direction as quickly as possible. Because what happens is you wander too much and then you're sort of aimless, and then you don't know what it is you want. You don't know what it is you're really good at. So we provide that support right up front, and we call it wraparound services. And we have a program at PCC called the First Year Experience, which does exactly that. It helps create a cohort of students who get those services to help them identify what it is they want, need, can do, love. And they work with a counselor. They create a program for themselves. And our first year experience has a subline. It says, get in, get out, get going. And I love that. It's the idea that there's energy behind this exploration. And so I've seen the community colleges evolve into very, very effective institutions. They were always rich in academic flavor, and now they're effective in really getting students through the system. It used to be that you had to be a pretty good self-advocate to figure it out.
Yeah.
And now they've got all these support services where they're there to assist you in figuring it out.
But Bobbi, as you know, I ran a large corporate foundation for over 20 years. And if there's one thing I learned of the thousands of proposals that I read, is that it's all about three things. It's all about jobs, it's all about housing, and it's all about education.
Mm-hmm.
With those things, you can transform the world, as corny as that may sound.
Yes.
And it's not always the most sexy, glamorous thing, right?
That's right.
But it is the foundation of everything, and it's so important. You've served as a president of the California Network of Community College Foundations, and let me just ask you, it's I'm sure a broad question to answer, but what are the biggest challenges facing community colleges these days? And I'd love for you to comment on, this debate on the national platform around free community college education for folks. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Honestly, I wish it wasn't a debate. I wish it was just done. And in California, we're getting it done. We have a lot of institutions here that have what they call the Promise Grant. It used to be called the Board of Governors waiver. It is still connected to your eligibility, your financial eligibility. But I'm ready for community college education to be free. It used to be. And then years ago, a little bit of fees here, a little bit of fees there. We're still the cheapest in the country. I shouldn't say cheap. We're the least expensive in the country.
Right.
I remember when I first moved here, the tuition had just gone up, and there were protests on community college campuses. And so I'm Googling, I'm thinking, well, how much is it here? I look at it, was $46 a credit hour. In Kansas, it was $90.
Wow.
So I don't know if California completely understands the amazing ability they have to reach out for that level of education already. But I do believe, and I'm very supportive of it being free, because a high school education just is not enough these days.
No, it is
not. You really do have to have some sort of advanced education, and I would love to see it completely free, without even the issue of financial eligibility. But we're not there yet. But like I said, I wish it wasn't a debate. I wish it was just, movement forward.
Well, the cost for education has skyrocketed. I spent a year at USC in 1979 before I transferred to UCLA. And the reason I transferred in part was USC was so expensive. It was $3,000 a semester or $156 a credit.
Yeah, there you go.
My father thought that was expensive. Today, it's $30,000 a semester or $60,000 a year. I guess I shouldn't complain. I was born at a good time. Well, let me ask you this too, because you were in the news recently, very happily,
Very, yes.
Very, very happily, because the Pasadena City College Foundation was the recipient of a $30 million contribution from Mackenzie Scott, Jeff Bezos' former wife, one of the 286 voices we need to hear. First of all,
Yep.
can you give me her email and her telephone number? Do you have that?
Yes, I have it right here in my back pocket.
After we're finished, just get on the horn and you can tell me. No, what an extraordinary accomplishment and what a tribute to your work. And but as we talked when we saw each other the other day, it's still not enough for everything that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about that, and what was that day like?
Oh, wow. Well, I was actually on vacation. In fact, so many gifts have come into our foundation while I'm on vacation or have taken a sick day that we decided in our office we should do a seminar on how to raise money on vacation. But I had gone back to Kansas City to see my kids, and I was sitting in a new restaurant in Kansas City called Snooze, having breakfast with a friend, and I get a call from my boss here, Dr. Erica Indrajanis. She's president of the college. And the very first thing and I thought, well, my boss knows I'm on vacation, so this must be important. So I answered the phone and she said, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "Yes." And I thought,
now what?
What I imagined an earthquake or something,
right.
And she said, "We just got notified of an anonymous gift for $30 million. And I said, "Holy bleep, 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 bleep."
Bleep. Yeah.
And I said, well, can you tell me something about this person? Are they from Pasadena? Are they alum of the college? And she said, I can only share it with you because we can only share it with the people who are sort of in the need to know. So she told me at that point who it was, but that we had to keep it very, very under wraps for at least 4 months or until the donor decided to make it public. So we were incognito. I was setting up accounts and, getting help on how you accept $30 million. And I went to the car and I called my mom from my phone. And of course, she knows I'm on vacation. She lives here in Pasadena now, and she's on vacation. She said, "Everything okay?" And I said, "Yes, you're not going to believe it. We just got this amazing, huge anonymous gift." And my mom said, "Oh, it's from me." And I thought, okay, then. Well, Mom didn't need to know any more information than that.
I love your mom.
But we did. We kept it very quiet. And on June 15th, literally 30 minutes, the timing was perfect for us. 30 minutes before the annual meeting of the foundation board of directors, she posted on her blog on Medium and announced it. And so we were able to announce it to our foundation board. Even our trustees of the college had been in the dark until like 2 days before that, to give them a heads up. But it's a one-time moment in a career. Again, especially in community colleges where we don't raise the level of funding that four-year institutions do. And so this was an enormous transformative gift. And it's completely up to our president, Dr. Indrajanis, how she wants to invest or spend this. And so far, the direction that she's given us, that she wants to invest it as if it's an endowment, even though it is an unrestricted gift. She wants to spend only the payout rate that we already have. And she's calling it the Community Excellence Fund. And so it has to invest for a while so that we have something to spend. And about this time next year, we will be able to give out some of the first grants. And she's going to be opening up a process where faculty, staff, administrators on the campus can come up with innovative ideas or advocate for a program that needs additional support. And that will be funneled through a process, and then she'll be making decisions about what to support. So she calls it her desire to president-proof the college, meaning setting it up this way means every president from here on out will be able to have, a little over $1 million every year to support the college as the needs arise. And I just think that's very visionary. Our foundation board was just stunned at not only the gift itself, but the faith that our college president have put in this community, because our foundation is really a community foundation of people in the community that represent, the goodwill of the college. And even when we started talking about how to invest, where to invest, all that, I said, would you like to come to these meetings? She said, no. I trust the group that you have in charge of this, and I want them to do this work. So she handed our community the ability to really have a voice in all of this too, which was just amazing.
So I have to ask you, did you even have a board meeting? Because I would have gone and gotten the champagne out and started that day. Everybody must have just been completely blown away.
I mean, June 15th, we were still on Zoom.
Right.
And so we had this board meeting where everybody there, and 30 minutes before I said, as part of your comments today, you can announce this. And it was the longest meeting we'd ever had, because it took 30 minutes just for us to hear the news, process the news, understand what this meant. And I have a Zoom recording of it, and the faces on Zoom just went.
I can imagine.
Yeah,
well,
it was a stunning moment.
God bless Mackenzie Scott for her vision and her generosity and her support of you and your work. It is extraordinary. And of course, when I heard about it, I wasn't joking when I said, do you have her email? But anyway, let me ask you this. This is so wonderful. During the last 20 plus years, and you've been in Los Angeles for just about 20 years.
10.
Oh, to 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm
yes.
sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Math was never my strong suit. Philanthropy, as we know, is changing. COVID really changed everything quite a bit. And so many organizations over the last 2 years, and even up into that time of COVID, have struggled. Funding is harder to get. Corporations are always looking for, it seems, different things depending on who's in charge. For someone in your position with your experience, what advice, guidance, encouragement, direction would you give people who are just starting out, your peers, other organizations, about how to navigate these very challenging times right now? Because they are, and many organizations are struggling to survive. What would you advise them?
Oh, I guess the first thing I'd say is pace yourself. Because this work is 24/7. In contrast, my sister is a respiratory therapist during COVID.
Wow.
And she I can't even imagine that sort of miraculous work that she does every day. But when she goes home, she turns it off. She hands her patients off to someone else, and she goes home, she turns it off, and she rests. When I go home, the people I work with all day long call me for dinner. They want to go talk about this. And so it's definitely a free-flowing kind of work. So you spend your social life with people that you work with, and you work with people you spend your social life with. So it's an all-encompassing kind of experience. Love every minute of it. But you do have to pace yourself. You have to say at some point that this day is going to be mine. Or I will tell you this, when my boss first started, I said, I work really hard, but I take my vacations. And sometimes I take 2.5 to 3 weeks at a time. I went to Italy one year. I spent extended time with my adult children, and we don't always go back to Kansas City. Now they're in 2 different cities. So we'll take a vacation together. We'll go to, last year we went to Costa Rica together, things like that. So you need to turn it off at some point and get a break. And that's why I'm saying the beauty of it is some of the biggest dollars I've ever raised, I was on vacation when I found out about it. And so let that karma,
Yeah,
sort of work for you, because you have to be renewed and refreshed, in this business.
you have to protect yourself, especially these days where you
Yeah.
have, electronic devices, emails that, um,
Hmm.
can just saturate your life. Well,
Yes.
I that pivots to another question I have. I love to always ask people about leadership. Um, I have worked with some of the most extraordinary people in my life. I look back on them, and by the way, thinking of college, I had some amazing professors as well who were so brilliant. But I've had some great bosses. I've also had some really bad bosses. And I think we all may have I hope not everybody has experienced that, but I had some real doozies. Um, what what in your estimation, what in your appraisal makes a great boss, makes a great leader? What characteristics, what qualities would you ascribe to that ability?
Very old-fashioned kinds of qualities. They have to care and they have to listen. And what I've learned is, even in my, reporting to my bosses through the years, I wasn't right about everything. I didn't have a solution for every problem. But if I felt like I could tell them about it, communicate with them, trust them to be part of a conversation looking for a solution, and that they cared about me professionally, um, even if they didn't take my suggestion, the fact that they heard me and I felt heard, when you can create a culture like that, then you don't have the great resignation that we're going through right now.
Right.
I've been to several lunches lately where we've talked about this phenomenon that's going on right now. And it all boils down to toxic cultures in the workplace. People learned that they could get their job done and they were having a good time and just as effective and just as productive working from home and not having to deal with some of those toxic cultures. And when you've got that, you're having to navigate your workplace instead of really get your job done.
It's so true. I've read many times in many places that people don't leave jobs, people leave managers,
That
um,
is correct.
and the manager sets the tone.
That's
You're awesome. I'm going to send you my resume. So
excellent.
uh,
Bring it on.
let me ask you this too. Are there some people in your life, past or present, historic figures, um, whom you admire, whom you most especially look up to, or perhaps had an influence on you? Who would those people might be?
The Kansas City Star did an article on me early in my career, uh, because I have used mentors in my life, and I had two in Kansas City that were very important to me. One's name was Barton Blond. He was the general counsel of United Missouri Bank early on, uh, and he he just taught me everything. Um, Taught me the corporate culture. What worked, what didn't. Put up a lot with a lot of my early, you know, green mistakes of being in the corporate world. Another one was a guy named Al Barton, who was my supervisor when I was at Johnson County Community College. So I really learned development from Al,
Hmm.
and I learned nonprofit leadership from him. And I still stay in touch. I'm still friends with these wonderful guys. And had a mentor named Jackie Snyder, who was chancellor of the metropolitan community colleges. And she taught me how to be a female in the workplace, because what you bring as a female is very different than what your male cohorts bring. And it's just fine to be a female. You don't have to. I remember one day early on, this was the 80s. I was so young, I was probably 23 at the time. I wore a man's tie to work one day.
How
I did,
radical.
because I thought, I need to be seen as, you know,
Appear and equal.
fitting in,
Yeah.
and I began to realize, all right, that's I,
Hmm.
I was trying it on for size to see, how. And early on, this is a term you may not have heard for a while, but or in the early 80s, there was this term called the mommy track. And the idea was that if you were a young woman in business and you had your children, they just assumed that if you didn't, quit your job, that maybe you weren't, serious about being a mother.
Yes,
And if
I recall.
you and if you did quit your job, so if you got pregnant while you were working, they assumed you were going to quit your job because you were on the mommy track. So there was really no way to navigate that very successfully, and so I was trying every way I could to figure it all out. And so when Jackie Snyder came into my life, she just had a presence about her and a wisdom about her in the corporate world that I really learned from. And then I had several people say things to me that I have kept as um, sort of philosophies in my life. And one of them was, you always honor the work of your predecessor. Even if that person was terrible and got fired and embezzled money, whatever it was, you find something that person did that is worth honoring, and you take that attitude into your workplace. You do not, because that person represented that organization for a while. And if
Wise advice.
you tank that person, you're tanking part of the organization that you're trying to lead. So you make sure that even during the tough years, there is a way to build up that organization.
That's really
Um,
sound advice. That is
so
really sound.
so between the different people and just moments of learning, what I'll never forget that my very first day as a development officer, the previous boss in the office had sent out a solicitation to the alums of that particular institution. And in all caps, it said, "You must have forgotten to give us money." And I remember thinking, I don't have any training in this, but that is not the way to do that. And I saw that. I thought, okay, well, I've got a long way to go here. And that day in the mail, very first day on the job, someone had responded back to that response with, of course, the business reply envelope. So they didn't have to pay any of the postage. It was this very heavy package. I opened it up. Someone had mailed a brick to the office and had attached that business reply envelope to it to make a very serious point. And that is not the way to get this job done. So it's moments like that through the years that I've learned a lot.
That's an extraordinary story. You still have the brick.
I remember the brick.
You remember the brick. Well, I love it. So let me just pivot again, with another question that I'd love to. And I always love this. Is perhaps my favorite question. What do you love about our city, Pasadena, Los Angeles, Southern California? You came from a very different part of the country,
Mhm.
and I know how hard you work because I've worked with you for many years, and this is you have a demanding job. You talked about pacing and protecting yourself. What does Bobbi Abram do for fun? What are your hobbies? How do you spend your personal time? What is that?
Well, unfortunately, one of my hobbies is dancing. And
Fabulous.
one of my favorite dance places closed down during COVID.
Oh,
So I am, there's a little bit of a edge to me that is really, you're reaching out to revive itself. But I love the hiking trails around here. So I happenstance found a hiking partner. I had gone on a trip with a friend from Kansas City. And while we were in the group, I met someone from Pasadena.
fantastic.
And when we got back from the trip, we found out we lived 6 blocks apart. So we hike on a regular basis.
Awesome.
And yeah, so the hiking trails are magnificent around here. The connection to, the mountains and the view when you get to the top, it puts everything in perspective.
It really does. It really
Mhm.
does. Ray and I love to go up Mount Low and look at where the old railroad was and
Yes, that was the
go
first
all that.
mountain I climbed here.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's wonderful. We're lucky. So, for our listeners, by the way, I We're speaking to you on Halloween. Today is
It
Halloween,
is.
and I'm
Yes.
looking at the candy over there and the decorations outside. We're getting ready. And Halloween today for you, Bobbi, is a
Yes,
very special anniversary.
it
So tell us
is.
why today is a very special date for you.
Well, first of all, thank you for asking that question. It is a special day. It's my 13th anniversary, so that's even more spooky, I guess, for people who find that number interesting. 13th anniversary of when I donated a kidney. Yes. I was working at an organization called the PCC Foundation, and one of the board members stood up at a board meeting and said, keep us in mind. Sally, his wife, said, the doctor said Sally's going to need a transplant sooner than expected. She needs it within the next 6 months.
Mm,
And her blood type is O positive. And the only thing that went through my head was, oh, I'm O positive.
wow.
And I didn't think anything else about it. And, fast forward a couple of weeks later, and my daughter has finished college and she's moved back home. Now, keep in mind, this was a year, maybe not even a year after my husband passed away. And so I was going through what that first year of grief feels like for anyone who's gone through it. And he happened to have a very rare form of leukemia that came upon and took his life within a matter of, I counted it one day, 110 days.
Oh,
And so there was a little bit of shock, a lot of sadness, a lot of recovering, that was going on. So my daughter had come home from college and she had gone to a church in the city where the college was. And she says, that denomination is here. Will you go with me? And, just let's check it out. I said, okay. So we go, we walk in. And of course, we're in a brand new place. So I picked the most innocuous person I could find to sit next to. There was a nice little old lady sitting there. I thought she looked safe, so we'll sit there. And I look up and there's a bar stool sitting up at the podium. And I turned to my daughter and I said, you'll fit in well here. There's a bar stool up there at the podium. And this woman on my other side heard me say that. She said, oh no, the reason he has that stool up there is because he just donated a kidney and he's needing to, sit in a sort of taller chair right now. And my daughter looks at me because she knew this, I had been thinking about this.
mhm.
And she goes, that moment. And I said, that's funny because I've been considering doing this. And she said, would you like to talk to him afterwards? And I said, I would love to. And I will tell you, at the time, the fear inside of me about making that decision was, I just lost my husband. I didn't want my children to lose another parent if
Right.
something went wrong in a surgery,
Sure.
nor did I want to donate a kidney and it not work. And then now there's another life I'm connected to that's also, had a tragedy in it. So I was, had all these fears and questions about it. Anyway, after the service, I talked to the pastor's wife and said, I really would like to ask you a couple questions about this whole process. And I said, tell me, how you ended up deciding to do this. And she said, well, the kidney is for our daughter. And she said, I donated my kidney to her 5 years ago and the kidney failed.
Mm.
And I thought to myself, that's exactly the fear that was in me, that something
Right.
like that would happen. And I said, how in the world did you get past that? How did you handle it? And she said, I did my part and now my husband's done his part. And that kidney got our daughter through high school. And she looked at me and she pointed right to me and she said, you have the gift of life inside of you. You should give it.
Oh, wow.
And
Jeez.
I mean, Jonathan, like that, the fear went away. And so the next day I picked up the phone and I called Sally, who was, she was 65 at the time. And I read a study that said if you need a kidney and you're 65, your chances of getting it are pretty low.
Hmm.
And because of the particular disease that she was fighting, she really did need her blood type. She really, two of her children were not her blood type.
Mhm.
So there really was nobody in the family that could donate. And so it just so happened that I had met Sally on Halloween 2007. And this was now probably August of 2008 when this phone call happened. And Sally had been gracious enough that she and her husband had allowed us to have several fundraisers there for the PKD Foundation. And I knew when I called her, she was going to be thinking, Bobbi's calling to see if they can have another fundraiser at our
Right.
house. They lived in San Francisco at the time. And so I got her voicemail. And I remembered practicing, how do you say, I would like to give you a body part? I didn't know quite how to say it. But I just said, Sally, give me a call back. And it took about 3 weeks because she happened to be in Europe at the time. So I finally get a call back and I said, Sally, I really don't know how to say this, but I think I'm supposed to donate a kidney to you.
Wow.
There was complete silence. And I really expected her to say thank you, but there's a waiting list. I didn't know what to expect. And finally she said, I will call the transplant office tomorrow. She goes, I am so overwhelmed. I don't even know what to say. And so there was a series of tests you have to take to make sure things are compatible and all that.
Sure.
We didn't actually do the matching until she was ready for the surgery. But the surgery took place at Ohio State, and they're phenomenal there, just so you know. So we went in, we had the test done, and the doctor came back and said, the match is beautiful.
Awesome.
And so we did the surgery on Halloween. That would have been 2008. So I met her Halloween 2007. We had this surgery Halloween 2000. So sometime today, one of us is going to pick up the phone and call the other one because we always connect on Halloween.
That is the most beautiful story that I have heard in a very long time. And I especially like what you said, that you have the gift of life inside of you. I quite coincidentally this morning in the week, I was reading that at any given time, there are 200,000 people in this country on waiting lists for organs, and
Yes.
that 12 people die every day because they didn't get one.
Because there's not.
Yeah, and you changed that statistic, and wow, I'm really at a loss for words. I'm deeply moved by that story, and you are. I always knew you were special. I just knew you were that special.
You just didn't know I only had one kidney.
I didn't know you only had one kidney. Well, listen, we're coming up to our time, and I just can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this visit, and I hope it's the first of more than this one. And let me just ask you one more thing. Is there anything else today that you'd like to share with us? Any last thoughts or comments to share with our listeners?
Since your program is really about philanthropy, and we're going into a season where just about every faith on the planet celebrates a moment during this season, I just really encourage people, you do have the gift of life inside of you, and you should share it. And in whatever capacity that is during this special season, participate by giving.
What a beautiful thought, and what a beautiful way to finish our community conversation. Bobbi, thank you so much. I loved every second of this, and I look forward to doing it again. And thank you for being you and all you do for our community. And big hug.
Big hug to you, Jonathan. This was fun.
Thank you, Bobbi.
Thank you.